Good morning, everyone. I know we're tired, but I'm just going to open us up in a word of prayer, and we can get into worship. Dear God, I thank you for this day, for the beautiful weather. I thank you that we can come here and worship you, God. I pray that you help us to set aside any worries or anxieties that we might have, any thing that may be going on in our life, and we can just take some time to worship you, God. I pray that you bless this time we have with you, and that we may truly just open up the eyes of our heart and praise you, God. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys can stand.
Even if I run away, your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes. You have no mercy for me every day. Your love never fails. 'Cause you stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. The wind is strong and the water's deep. I'm not alone here in these open seas. Your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side. 'Cause your love never fails. 'Cause you stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. And you make all things work together for my good. And you make all things work together for my good. And you make all things work together for my good. And you make all things work together for my good. And you make all things work together for my good. 'Cause you stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy see many searching for answers far and wide, but I know that we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. 'Cause you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, it's love so undeniable. I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. For I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. For I took a breath, you breathed your life for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Dear God, I thank you for this day. I pray that you bless this message, God, and that you allow us to set aside any distractions and truly focus on you. I pray that we can all walk away learning something about you and taking steps closer in our faith. In Jesus' name, amen. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Merielle. I ask that you guys just open up your ears and really take something from her because she's a wonderful person.
Thank you for having me today. I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time back to church in a while. And Kika asked me to speak actually 2 weeks in a row because he's away. So I hope you don't get sick of me. But when he asked me to speak, I was trying to find what I was going to talk about. And usually when I speak to this group, I talk about spiritual discipline. I think we talked about silence once. We talked about other things in the past. But honestly, I must admit that during COVID, discipline has not been one of my strongest suits. So I was trying to figure out something to talk about that I wouldn't stand up here feeling like a total hypocrite. So So instead of talking about something that I do or that we could do, I want to share with you that I chose to learn something about something I desperately need. So I watch a lot of Food Network. And have you guys ever heard of the show Chopped? Who's heard of the show Chopped? Raise your hand. Okay. Anyone heard of Top Chef? Okay, so these cooking competitions where someone wins and someone loses, and inevitably someone loses, and they have these comeback tournaments where whoever lost the first time comes back and they all compete again to see who can win, and they call it these like redemption tournaments. And these cooks, they're all like, "I'm back for redemption," and I was like, "Why the guys? You're cooking. Why the drama?" It's not usually a word that you hear, although now I've been hearing it everywhere since I decided to talk about this, outside of church, right? But they're always like, they feel like they've let themselves down, their families down. They want to, like, it's not just about the prize money. It's not that they just want to win the $10,000. They're like, "I'm back for redemption. I should have won the last time." And they say things like, "I owe it to myself to make a comeback." So it made me think, like, why are they being so dramatic? Why are they using this word? What is redemption? Clearly they're not talking about needing Jesus. They're talking about overcoming some sort of experience, some sort of loss, experience of loss. They want to get back what they lost. It's more like their pride or their sense of self that they lost when they were eliminated from the competition the first time. And somehow it seems to even like run into their sense of identity. So I must admit that over the past several years, there have been a good amount of losses in my life. Some big, some small, some permanent, some fleeting. And just like those chefs, I feel like I've been striving to overcome those losses, to get back to some sort of self that I was before them, or maybe to a new self that I can be after I overcome them. And so it occurred to me that perhaps other people are having the same struggle as well. Trying to be a kind of self that they feel is out of reach, trying to get back to a sense of security or confidence or health or status or whatever. I'm sure that I am not the only one who feels at a bit of a loss at the time. And so I chose to do a bit of reading and listening on the topic of redemption and share with you some things I've learned. Part 1, redemption from. Inshallah, next week will be redemption for. So, okay. So if you Google the definition of redemption, these are the first two that come up. The action of saving or being saved from sin, error, or evil. That's kind of the one we're most used to talking about in church. And then the action of regaining or gaining possession of something in exchange for payment or clearing a debt. And that seems radically different from the first one. It seems more like something you do like at a coupon, like with a coupon at a store. Like you redeem this coupon for your free video game, or you redeem, that's kind of the most, like redeem this coupon for whatever it is. You exchange, it's some sort of exchange. Or even in the chopped kitchen, right? They're trying to regain possession of something that they lost. So they seem to be radically different, but the Christian tradition tells us that they are inextricably linked. You cannot have one without the other. So to figure out the relationship between these things, we're going to look at it in 3 parts. What is lost? Redemption is about regaining something lost. What it cost. I didn't mean to make it rhyme, it just did. And then getting it back. So first things first, if we want to talk about something being redeemed, we need to start by talking about what was lost in the first place. And so we go, keep pointing at the wrong thing. We got to go all the way back to the beginning. First things first, so we got to go all the way back to the beginning, back to Eden. So we all know the story. God says, let there be light, and it was very good, and God says, creates all the stuff, and he says it's very good, and he says it's good, and then he creates the people, and he says it's very good, and then he says, don't eat of the tree from the middle of the garden, and then they don't listen, and then suddenly everything's not so very good anymore. Things go from being very good to being very bad. Tim Keller has a really extraordinary explanation of what this whole story is about, or one way that we can look at kind of the meaning of what happened in the garden in the fall. And so he starts off by going ahead and saying what many people think. Don't tell, we all think this. God, what's up with the tree? Why the tree? No, go back. God, what's up with the tree? Why such an arbitrary rule, right? You could have said something like, don't kill. Okay, we understand that. Don't kill, that's bad. Don't lie. Why the tree? Why don't eat of the tree? What's going to happen if I eat from the tree? It's just a tree, right? It's not like you're going to poison. Like, what's the deal? So sometimes we feel like God just made up this arbitrary random rule just to mess with them. And Keller says, it's arbitrary. He made up an arbitrary rule. But the kicker is that it had to be. He wasn't just messing with them. If God had given Adam and Eve a rule and said, here's paradise, have fun, have at it, but don't kill each other, right? Adam could have said, God, I shouldn't kill Eve, because then who's going to help me with the animals? And I'm going to be kind of lonely, and then we can't really, be fruitful and multiply, and everyone would die out, and I'd be really lonely. So, God, good call on that one. Good call. Not going to kill you. It makes sense, right? But a rule that makes sense is a rule in which I am still in control of what gets to be called a good call, right? Who gets to make the good call? Adam? Is Adam the one who gets to decide what the good call is, right? Or is it God? Who gets to have the final say? The creature or the creator? The one who just showed up on the scene, or the one who created the whole scene from its elements to its mountains, from atoms to mountains, right? Who gets to say good call? Who understands the system better? How everything fits together and interacts and depends on each other? The one who received life as a gift, or the one who gave it and is its very source? Who gets to be in charge of saying good call? So when God says don't eat of the tree, and it's a rule given, he says you will surely die, but he doesn't really explain how this works, right? Like Adam could think about, if I kill Eve, blah, 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 right? He says don't eat of the tree or you'll die. What? I don't get it. Why does eating of the tree mean death? When he gives this rule without a clear, detailed understanding of the consequences, he is saying, to quote Keller, this is your chance. You can either choose to treat me as God and to treat your life and the world as if it belongs to me, and therefore you have to use it as I direct, or you can put yourself in the place of God. You can act as if your life is yours and that you generated it. You can act as if this entire world is yours and you can use it any way you want. You can treat me as God, or you can put yourself in the place of God. Now, of course, we know what they did, right? They ate from the tree. What we learn from Keller's characterization of the story is that at its core, sin is not a matter of following the rules. Sin is fundamentally a matter of identity, where I put myself in place of God. And I say, no, this is what's good. This is the good call. Your call, not so good. My call, good call. Your call, bad call. My call, good call. I am putting myself in God's place. Instead of taking my place as creature when I decide to put my values and my choices and my wants and my desires ahead of the system that God put in place, I'm taking God's place. Say, no, I got this. I can build my own system. I don't need yours. And so I choose to be a self that's different than the self that God created me to be. So when I choose to sin, I'm choosing what self I'm choosing myself, not the self God created me to be. So which self am I going to choose to be? The one created by another, to whom I owe thanks and praise for even my very existence, or the self I create to give myself an illusion of independence? Whose rules do I follow, his or mine? Part of the fall is choosing our own morality instead of God's to create an independent self. We want to be on our own. We don't want to follow this system, this set of what God says are the good calls. We want to choose our own. But that's never the self we were created to be. That's not how he wanted us to be. Those aren't the values he wanted us to embody. Those aren't the choices he created us to be making. Keller goes on to explain that when Adam and Eve believed the serpent's lie, right? The serpent comes and says, did he really say that? If you eat of the tree, you won't surely die. You won't die. God says, eat of the tree, you'll die. And he says, did he really say that? Or, did he really say that? That's ridiculous. You're not. And so, Keller explains that when they believed this lie, what they were really believing is this lie that if you obey God, you'll miss out. If you obey God, you won't be happy. If you obey the will of God, it'll cut you off from the other options. It'll keep you from being all you want to be. You will not thrive and flourish. If you obey God, you can't be the self you want to be. That's the lie. So when I read this part of Keller's sermon, something hit me. This was not just Adam and Eve. There are definitely areas in my own life where I believe Satan's lie. I believe that if I put aside my goals and my values, my aspirations in exchange for God's will, I will not be happy. It kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I really believe that if I, don't get this kind of job, then I can't be happy. Right? And there's been many times where like I keep heading in this direction and it keeps posed in my face, right? And I realize like I believe this lie. There are lots of times in my life where I believe this lie that if I follow the plan God has for me, or even if I don't know what that plan is, but like I keep following my own plan, like and just like hitting my head against the wall. Because I believe I won't be happy otherwise. Like I can't even imagine being happy any other way. And then I realized it's kind of ridiculous, right? How could I really believe that if that God, the God who has created me, that who knows my ins and outs and my very being, would put me in a position where I wouldn't be happy if I followed? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, and yet we believe it. Or I believed it. It's interesting that I believe that the God who created my very being doesn't have a plan that would form me into the very thing that would make me most fully and successfully me. But I suspect that Adam and Eve and I are not the only ones who have fallen for this lie. Ask yourself, have you ever fallen for it? Ever thought to yourself, if I don't hang out with these people, or if I don't listen to that music, or if I don't get into that program, or if I don't get that job, or if I don't make that money, or if I don't consume that substance, or if I don't hold that grudge, or carry this anxiety, or get invited into that group, I will not. If I don't date or marry that person, or fit into that size dress, I can't be happy. There are all these values that we have called good for ourselves that maybe God has not. But we fear that if we let them go, then we may have nothing left of ourselves. And so we hold on to a self that isn't really who we are designed to be. And so, in the story of Genesis 3, we have found out what was lost. Here is what needs to be redeemed. We have lost the selves that we were created to be. Right? It wasn't just Adam and Eve. We do this. We put our own values and our own goods in place of the things that God has called good. We make ourselves God. We say, I'm the one in charge. And in so doing, we lose out. We lose out on the fullest life that we can possibly have. I mean, just think about it. If I decide that I have to hold that grudge, right? That grudge is like, it's my pride, right? It's who I am. Like I have to hold that grudge. And I say, no, without that grudge, people are not going to respect me. If I let this go, then I'm not respected. And I hold on to this grudge. What does that do? That turns me into a bitter person. That holds me into a hard person. That makes me into a hard person. That's not a good. That's not a good. If I refuse to forgive, right, I'm the one who's being hurt. And we'll talk about that a little more. But there are all of these things that we miss out on. Or if I say, I cannot possibly go into that career. God, you're calling me this, but I like this over here. I want to do this. And if I don't do this, then people won't respect me. If I don't do this, I won't respect myself. How could I? And we keep trying and losing time and losing energy and doing things that we're not built for. Anyway, we lose out on who we are designed to be. So we need to try to get that back. That's what's lost. But what does it cost? This is the next part. As it turns out, even more catastrophically, this disordered morality, right? This replacing God's goods for our own, believing that God doesn't love us and isn't good and doesn't have our best good at heart, is not only the source of my individual suffering, it is the source of the suffering of all of creation. This is how everything falls apart. Very simply put, when we sin, we put our rules and our ways and our system in place of God's, and things fall apart. That's not how they were built. If I choose to steal, then people can't rely on, having their goods, and then they can't. I take someone else's goods, then why would someone work for things if then they know that they're just going to get stolen and they can't get them back, right? And there's no justice. Things fall apart. We can't build a society on those things. If I choose to lie, then people can't trust me. They can't trust my word. They can't move forward based on something that I have said, right? We make a contract, and then I lie, and things fall apart. If I gossip, if someone injures me physically, right, things fall apart pretty quickly. If I'm injured, and then I can't work, and then I can't provide for my family, things fall apart when we put our own selfishness and our own rules ahead of God's. That's the source of everything that falls apart. Someone hurts you or you hurt someone, things fall apart. Okay. So we put our good in place of God's. We hurt ourselves and each other. That's pretty. It doesn't always seem straightforward, let's be honest. Sometimes I feel like this is a victimless crime. If I cheat on my test, who's gonna know? And I get away with it. I get a good grade. Teacher doesn't know. Everyone moves on, right? Victimless crime. And yet, we hurt ourselves, right? You missed out, as it goes, you miss out on learning the thing you could have learned, right? You miss out on being that better that better student, that better professional, that better whatever. Also, but we hurt each other, right? You might get a better grade and then get something because of that grade that someone else who actually earned it missed out on. They miss out because you took their space, right? You get an internship because you lied on your interview, where someone who actually did all the work doesn't get that opportunity. They are then hurt. They've missed out on something. There is a loss that is incurred, either on my own behalf or on someone else's behalf. There's a loss that's incurred. When we experience those losses, right? If someone wrongs me, if someone takes my internship and I miss out on the opportunity, or gets that scholarship, or gets that job, or I think there's a million examples, and I miss out, or if someone kills my brother, right? If someone drives drunk and kills someone that I love, there is a loss. Now, there are two things that can happen when we experience loss. We can forgive them, or we can make that person pay, right? We need to cover the loss. You need to recoup the loss. We all feel like, no, I want justice. I want my shot. I want my space. It's not right. It's not fair. I have lost something and I need to get it back. So you can either make the other person pay, right? Like if someone steals something from you, they can pay you the cost, right? But what if they can't pay it back? You can hurt them in return, but revenge doesn't, it just creates more loss. Revenge creates more loss on the other person's side, and it doesn't really give you back what you lost. So the other option, and sometimes the person can't pay it back, right? If someone is driving drunk and kills someone you love, they cannot bring that person back. They can go to jail, but they can't bring that person back. They can, in some ways, pay the cost, but there are some things that you cannot recoup the loss of. Other option is to forgive. Now, when we forgive, we do not make the other person pay the cost. We say, I will carry that hurt. I will absorb the loss. Let's say I lend someone $50, right? And they lose it. They lose it and they don't have it to pay back to me. I can make them pay back. I can take them to court and I can say, you owe me the $50 and I'm going to take your car or whatever. I'm going to take your whatever if you don't pay me my money. Or you can say, I'm going to forgive you. And so you have absorbed the loss. You are $50 down. But it hurts. You took the loss. It hurts. And when someone really hurts you, not just like loses $50, but when someone wrongs you deeply, if someone has gossiped about you, betrayed you, if someone has been denied you something because of prejudice or racism, if someone has looked down on you and made fun of you for whatever reason, and you decide to forgive, you have to absorb that loss. Absorbing that loss hurts. Now, eventually, with time and with practice, it doesn't hurt so much anymore. It's as if a wound has been healed. The gap that is created between you and that person gets healed, because forgiveness is like the healing of a wound, and yet it still hurts. The process of forgiving hurts. If you've ever had to forgive someone who really hurt you, you know that it's not cheap. You know that it comes at a cost, at a price, an emotional, physical, spiritual cost. A lot of times we have to do some spiritual work to be able to forgive people that have hurt us. There is this wound, this gap, this loss that's created because of sin. And when we forgive, it hurts. Forgiveness hurts. And yet, it is the only way to close the wound, to recoup the loss, to cover the gap. So, making the gap hurt and closing the gap hurt. But we've already said that sometimes we can't close the gap. Sometimes we hurt others and we can't close the gap. And sometimes they hurt us and they can't close the gap. We have lost, all of us have lost the most full opportunity to be who we are, or our most fullest sense of self, right? This Eden self that we imagine that was perfect and happy and never experienced any pain or any suffering or any never hurt anyone else. We've lost that. It's out of our reach. Now, redemption, the beauty of the Christian story of redemption is that we are given an opportunity to get that back. How does that work? So, on to Abraham. Keller tells this story about Abraham, or stories in the Bible, and Keller interprets the story. And it's in Genesis 15, and we're not going to turn to it. I'm just going to kind of quickly recount it. And God says to Abraham, Abraham, I'm going to bless you. You follow me, I will bless you. You're going to have all these descendants, all these people are going to inherit the land, and you're going to be this great father of nations. And Abraham says, God, that's great, I believe you, but how do I know? I'm going to be dead. How do I know that these people are going to inherit the land after I'm gone? So God says, Abraham, I'm going to make a covenant with you. I am going to promise that I am going to bless your people. And so he says, Abraham, I need you to take these animals, I need you to cut them in half, and I need you to kind of spread them side to side, half here and half there, and wait. Now, this seems like a very weird story if you guys have ever heard it or read it. Very weird to us. Why are we cutting up animals and like sitting around and waiting for things? What's going to happen? The vultures come and try to eat them. Like, what else do you think is going to happen? There's a dead animal sitting here. This was apparently a very common practice in the ancient Near East. When two people are going to make a covenant, if they're equals, right? They make this covenant. They put these things there, and then they walk through them. And it's as if to say, may it happen to me as happened to these animals if I don't hold up my end of the deal. So may I be like split apart and laid out for the vultures. It's a pretty serious deal. It's a serious thing. It means that there's a consequence. If I fail to hold up my end of the bargain, let's say I'm going to let your sheep graze on my land and you're going to give me access to your river. If I, for some reason, kill all your sheep, you then have the right to kind of come for me. You have the right to come for me. I say, I promise to do this, and you promise to do this, and we're both going to promise, and we're going to walk through this thing, and if someone fails to keep their promise, the consequences are severe. And both people understand this. Now, if two equals are making this promise, this covenant, they both walk through these pieces, right? If a lord and a peasant, right, the lord who owns the land and the peasant who lives on the land is making this kind of covenant, the lord never walks through. The person in power doesn't walk through because they're just too, why would they have to promise? Of course they can recoup the loss of the peasant. The peasant doesn't have anything to begin with, right? So when a lord and a peasant make a covenant, and the peasant is promising to, work the land of the lord or whatever it is they're doing, the peasant is the one who walks through. So when God tells Abraham, I need you to set up this covenant, Abraham knows, okay, I got to walk through. So God says, set up this ritual and then wait for me. So Abraham's waiting for God, and he's waiting for him to come so that he can walk through and they can do this thing. And nothing happens. God waits, and this darkness falls over Abraham. He falls asleep. And then it says the smoking fire pot, which I don't even know. The smoking fire pot walks through the pieces, and it represents God. God himself walks through. And God promises. Now, it's a covenant. So both people have to promise, if I don't keep up my end, may this happen to me. But Abraham doesn't get to hold up his, like, he doesn't even get to make the promise. God makes the covenant for both of them. God walks through. So what that means is that God is the guarantor. God says, not only if I don't hold up my end of the bargain, may this happen to me. God says, since he's taking the place of Abraham in the ritual, Abraham is the peasant didn't walk through, God walked through. God is taking Abraham's place. He says, not only if I don't hold up my end, but when you don't hold up your end of the bargain and your people and your descendants forsake me and go for other gods and do all the things that I told them they shouldn't do, or their whole cities and their lives are going to fall apart, and they do them anyway, when that happens, may this happen to me too. I am holding up the consequences. God has decided to hold up both sides of the bargain because he knows we can't. He knows Abraham can't. And when later the descendants of Abraham, right, they fail to hold up their end of the bargain, which is to follow God and have him be their only God and all of this stuff. And God says, if you do this, I will bless you. If you don't do this, I won't bless you. And yet, he continues to call them back and to bless them. But they didn't hold up their end of the bargain. So what, does God not care about the covenant? Did God just go through the motions for nothing? No. God held up the end of the covenant because when they failed to hold up their end, and the covenant means, may this happen to me, may I be torn apart if I don't keep my end of the bargain. That's what God said. He said, may I be torn apart if I don't keep my end of the bargain. He also said, may I be torn apart if you don't keep your end of the bargain, so that we can close this deal. And he was, right? When we look at Christ, we see that God upheld not only his side of the bargain, he upheld ours because he knew that we can't close the deal. We cannot make up for the losses that we incur on each other and to him. We can't pay the debt, so to speak. We can't heal the wound. We can't even absorb, right? Even forgiveness sometimes, we can't even absorb the losses that we cause ourselves. He said, I will absorb them. I will take them. On the cross, God himself fulfilled that covenant on our behalf. Now, a lot of times we look at the cross and we think, okay, Jesus took my punishment or paid my debt so that God could forgive me. Right? It's like this on my behalf. Like someone pays the $50 for your friend. They give it back to you to make you whole. So there's this God who needs to have his kind of debt canceled. Right? He needs to be paid back. And so Jesus pays it for us because we can't pay it. That's kind of a very common way we hear of what it means for us to be redeemed. It is a very valid, a very powerful way that we can see God's justice. It is not the only way that we can look at the cross. God is really, really big. And so we can't always see all of him from one angle. We can't see all of him from one angle. Another way to see what happened on the cross is that Christ's suffering and death on the cross is the very embodiment of God's forgiveness, right? We said forgiveness hurts. When we forgive, it takes out of us. It takes our energy. It takes our physicality. It causes a little bit of a death. We have to die to our pride to forgive, right? It causes these little moments of death and suffering and hurt. When Christ died on the cross, God himself was forgiving us. That forgiveness hurts. That was God's forgiveness. That is when, among all the time of eternity, but that is when his forgiveness is actualized. It is that suffering. that hurt that he took. And when we say Jesus died so I don't have to, it's not that we never experience suffering. It's not that we never die. We do. People die every day. But what it means is that we have the opportunity now, because he covered that loss, to participate with him in that forgiveness, to participate with him in recouping the self that we could have been. It's not just or simply or only, right, that the Son died to appease the Father. The Father, or God, all of him, all of himself, God's self, forgave us in the act of the cross. That's how we see what it means, right? We say, why did Jesus have to die? God could have just forgiven us. That was God forgiving us. It hurt. You can't just erase the loss. You have to cover the loss to make someone whole. When we say God had to, like there is a price for sin. It's not that there's like a punishment that we incur because I was bad, so like, right? That's not how it is. When we sin, when we incur this loss, we fall away from what it is that we are fully made to be. God's forgiveness is covering that loss and saying, I'm giving you the opportunity to be made whole. When Jesus says, okay, you know? Okay. When Jesus says, whoever finds his life, in Matthew 10:39, whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. What he's doing is giving us a chance to reclaim our lost identity. When we identify in Christ with the forgiveness that he gave us, and we see that God himself put himself out there on our behalf so that we could participate through the Holy Spirit in the new life that he offers. In the ability, he doesn't ask us to forgive when he didn't forgive himself, right? He doesn't ask us to do something that he didn't already do. We say, oh, he's God, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't really hurt him to forgive me. It doesn't really hurt him. It doesn't cost him anything. He's God. Whatever, it's easy. It's not easy. And yet, he knew we wouldn't ever be able to do it. And he made a way so that we could still reclaim that sense of who we are. But it takes us identifying with him. Not with me. Not with my values, not with my goals. When I lose my life, lose my aspirations and all of those things that I hold, not that we should have aspirations, but when we hold too tightly to them and make them idols, when we give those up and identify with him and with his values and with who he's called us to be, right? That's when we find our true self. Redemption happened when Christ suffered the debt for our sins. And redemption continues to happen when we participate in the suffering of Christ, when we take the suffering of others, when we fight for the oppressed, when we take responsibility for pain and injustice, and pain and injustice that we cause, and absorb the pain and injustices that we did not cause. That's what redemption is for. Right? We found out what we were redeemed from. That's what redemption is for. We'll talk about that a bit more next week. But if we just look quickly at our definition, I'm hoping that now we can see the relationship between the two. The act of being saved from sin or error and evil, and the act of regaining possession of something clearing a debt, closing a wound. Those two are completely related because we're trying to regain what we lost when we sinned. We're trying to regain our true sense of self, which is as the created, part of the created order, part of the good plan when God said it was very good, right? That's what we're trying to regain. We can only regain that when we lose ourselves for Christ. If we try to find ourselves, we'll lose them. If we try to lose ourselves in him, we will find them.
Before I close this, I think we have an announcement video from Freddie. Freddie couldn't be here. No announcement video? No announcement video. Sorry about that. Not too sure what there is, but what I do know is there's prayer on Friday at 7. And that's all I know, but I'll close this out in prayer. There's a video, everybody. All right, I guess I'll close this out. God, I thank you for this time you've given us. I thank you that we can come together and learn about redemption, God, and learn to praise you. I thank you that we aren't identified by our sin and that you came as a redeemer, God, and the pain that it must have felt to send your son, God, but you did it for us. I thank you for that. I thank you for Merielle, that she offered to speak to us for the next couple weeks. And I pray for the rest of our day. I pray for that we can just enjoy ourselves with this nice weather. Amen. You're all free to go.
Oh. Samir? 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 Maya! Big! No, 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 no. No, 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 no.
Ooh.
No! Give it to me! Wait.
I can't sing. That's the thing. I don't know how to sing.
Can't. Yeah, we can. Say it.
Whoa. What just happened? Look at me go. Whoa.
My
Mark.
fault.
Did you just touch the...
I thought it was supposed to like Star Wars.
What up? So mine is louder actually, you know?
What?
Mine is louder.
That's not.
There it is. I don't want to collect the chairs.
Neither do I.
No.
Okay, I'll get down, but I'm not giving you the microphone back.
Party, yeah.
Woo! I am the king! Woo, woo. Just slow, Mark.
Marky.
Stop!
Benjamin.
No!
For carrot magic in the air. Head to toe so flat.